We're going to go ahead and begin to assemble our Trammel toy. So what we ended up doing is we inserted all these parts. In my imported parts folder down here, I have all of these files. This was the file that we downloaded from an Onshape public document. We also have these files that we ended up downloading from McMaster-Carr. And so if you end up going on to McMaster-Carr, if you don't have these parts, you can search for these, download these, and then we just ended up going here and importing those. And so we're going to go ahead and insert all these parts into here from this insert window. That's what I already ended up doing. These VEX connector pins, though, I did end up going to insert. I went to other documents, and then this is where I typed in VEX connector pin, and we went for a 1x1. You could also do a 2x1 if you'd like to, but you can click any of these files that say 1x1 connector pin and it'll look like this. Anyways, let's go ahead and let's begin. What I'm going to start by doing is I'm going to go ahead and set up these fasteners. So I'm going to put these socket head screws into these holes, and so what we're going to be using for this is going to be the fasten mate. Now, one thing that is particularly helpful for this is going to be using the shift trick, is what that's called. So if we hover over a plane, you can hold down shift, and what that's going to do is it's going to lock you in on that plane so that you can go and select another point. Please do notice how if I end up letting go of shift, it switches which plane I'm on. And so what we're going to do is we're going to hover over this plane that the bottom of the socket head screw is going to be in contact with. I'm going to hold down shift, and then I'm going to click on this center point. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to one of my socket head screws, and I'm going to use the shift trick once again. I'm going to hover over this plane that the socket head screw is going to be in contact with the upper left guide block with. I'm going to hold down shift, and then I'm going to go and select that center point. Now what you're going to notice is that this guy goes in here, and what we've got to do is it's currently facing the wrong direction. If I flip the primary axis, you can see that it's going to be set up in the correct orientation. What you can also end up doing is if you press this rotate, it'll rotate any of the objects. Obviously for this particular scenario, it doesn't really matter if we rotate the socket head screw or not. So I'm going to go ahead and click the green check mark now. And what we're going to do is we're going to continue to do that for these next two items. So we're just going to hover over here, press shift, click on that. We're going to hover over this plane, hold down shift, click on that, and then we're just going to make any changes here. So I might have to flip the direction, green check mark. Nice, next one. Then we're going to go into this guy, hold down shift, select that point. Oop, there we go. Go over here back to our socket head, hold down shift, there we go. Green check mark, hold down shift, there we go. Click on this guy. There we go, and then let's flip that direction once again. Nice. So now we got all our socket head screws. So that's using the fasten mate. That means that these are not going to end up moving. Additionally, you could end up using the cylindrical mate, is what it's called. If you use the cylindrical mate, that will then allow you to remove those guys. All right, perfect. So now let's go ahead and let's pop on the back. As we were talking about in class, we are going to have the hex nuts that are going to go in here. And so what we're going to do is it's going to be a pretty similar process. We're going to hover over this face. Once again, we're going to hold down shift, and then we're going to select on that center point there. Now what we're going to end up doing is we're going to go over to our hex nuts. We're going to end up holding down shift, and then we're going to click on the center point here. Now what we're going to end up doing is, as you can see, it's going through that material. We're going to flip the primary axis. And then now I'm also noticing that these are not lined up. If I press this little guy right here, it'll rotate it. If I go green check mark, you can see now that we have the hex nut in there correctly. Let's go ahead, let's zoom out. We're gonna do the same thing for all these other hex nuts. And so let's go ahead and fasten mate right here, and then back to the hex nut, hold down shift, click that center point, perfect. And then we're just gonna go in here. We're gonna flip the direction, orient that, green check mark, nice. Let's go down here. There we go, boom. And don't forget about that shift trick. Hold down shift always after hovering over the plane that you're trying to select the point on. So we're gonna rotate. Now we can do this a little bit differently. I could select this hex nut as well, and I can go in here. So I'm gonna hold down shift, there we go, boom. Flip this direction, rotate, bam, green check mark, nice. Okay, what we're gonna do in this next part is we're gonna actually put in our dowel pins. And so right here in this center part, we're gonna have the 5mm dowel pins. Out here on this part, we're gonna have the 6mm dowel pins. And so as you can see, these are the 5mm. If you also click on these, you can end up highlighting these. As long as you change these names, these part names, you'll see that this is the 5mm dowel pin, and then if you click on this other one, you'll see that this is the 6mm. We're gonna go ahead and begin with the 6mm. And so what we wanna do is we wanna hover over this. If we hold down shift, that'll lock in these different options. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to click this top part here. So we're going to click on that point, and then what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to hover over this plane, select, hold down shift, and then click on that. And as you can see, we placed that dowel pin in there properly. What we can then end up doing is let's go to the other 6mm dowel pin. We're going to hold down shift. We can go up to this top point here. And my apologies, we're actually going to be going to this side. This is the side that should be sticking out. As you can see, this side that kind of has a little bit of the chamfer here, that's going to actually go in first. And so it's going to be this point here that's going to be on the actual top. And so we can hover over here, hold down shift, click on that point, and then now what we've got to do is just flip that direction, green check mark. What I do need to do is I need to end up making the change to this. And so this is how you can end up making changes to your make connection types. If I hover over this, I'll see that that is fasten 11. I can click on this. I'm going to go ahead and deselect that point on the 6mm dowel pin. Then what I can do is I can actually click and drag this guy out. Now, just as we said, this is the piece that's going to go in first actually, and so what I want to do is select this side. So hold down shift, click that. Now all I've got to do is just flip this direction. So now we can press green check mark. There we go, we've got that one established in there. Now what I'm going to do is fasten mate. I'm going to select these 5mm dowel pin holes, so I'm going to go there. And once again, we're going to keep in mind, this is the part that goes in first. This is the part that's supposed to be, or this side is supposed to be up at the top. So once again, we just flip the direction as that dowel pin's sticking out the wrong way. And then we're going to go into here, fasten mate, and then we're going to click on this while holding down shift. I'm going to come in here, hold down shift, and then click down here. Once again, we're going to flip that direction there, green check mark. All right, perfect. So now what we've got is we've got all these dowel pins added in, and then we've also got these socket head screws added in there. All right, next thing that we're going to end up doing is we're going to click and drag these two guys out. In terms of these, this is the pin slider, and then this is the screw slider. As you will remember, the screw slider is going to end up needing that hex nut at the very bottom. So what we can do, hover over this plane that's on the inside here, hold down shift, click on that center point. Then what we're going to do is hover over this hex nut, hold down shift, click on that center point. Then you're going to end up seeing that we can flip that direction. It's going to end up showing it that it's over here. What we can also do is click and drag this just so that we can see this a little bit better. And what we can end up doing is ensuring that everything's lined up there, and it looks like that is the case. Green check mark. Now that guy is ready to go. We're going to actually use a connector pin for the pin slider, and then for this guy, we're going to end up using the screw slider. Okay. So let's go ahead, let's get ready to go to this next part. As you can see, this is the pin slider, right? We want the pin slider to be sliding through here because this profile of these guide blocks matches that. So what we're going to use for this is a mate connection type that is called the slider mate. And so what we're going to do is we're going to actually hover over this plane that is right here. And we're going to wait for the Wi-Fi to load. Okay, perfect. So now we're going to hover over this plane, we're going to hold down shift, and we're going to actually select this center point here. So I'm going to select that point. Now what I've got to do is, on accident I select that twice, but what I've got to do is now I've got to hover over this pin slider on this edge, and I'm going to hold down shift while being on this face, and I'm going to select this point that's right here in the middle. Now, it might end up coming in kind of weird here. What we can do is we can rotate this. So we're going to rotate. We're going to click to rotate. It seems like we are having some issues. Oh, so it selected the pin slider twice on accident. Let's bring this guy down. Let's try this again. So I still have the pin slider mate selected. What I would need to do is reselect this guy. And so now I see that we got the pin slider as well as the base plate. I can reorient this, and we can do that. Now what I can also do is I can end up pressing play. Now as you can see, this has the correct movement where it's gonna, like how it's supposed to move. So it's supposed to be sliding within that slot. The next thing we can end up doing is we can set up another slider mate. So these are these sliders, right? So we're gonna end up using that. Now currently we have an issue. If I hover this over this plane, I'm not able to see that center mark. So if I go over to the other side, let's see if we end up having something like there. Yeah, we do. So I can hold down shift, I can click on this, and then what I can also do is hover over this plane, hold down shift, click on this, and now what I can do is I can test that out. And so as we're seeing here, that it's moving correctly. And so basically what we're doing with these mate types is we're establishing the particular type of movement that we want to see. So this guy can slide this way, and then this guy can slide this way, right? Perfect. So now the screw slider is over here. The screw slider has the hex nut at the bottom. What we need to do is we need to go ahead and put that socket head in there. And so we also need to end up putting the VEX connector pin in there. For this socket head here, we're actually going to end up setting up something that's called the cylindrical mate. Now I'm going to go ahead and select the cylindrical mate, hover over this plane, press shift, click on this point here. Let's try that again. Hover, there we go, click. And then now I'm going to go ahead and hover over this. I'm going to hold down shift, click right here. And so now let's go ahead and show you what this movement looks like for the cylindrical mate. Basically what it's going to allow is going to be rotation as well as translation. So this is actually any screws. So if we press play, you'll see how there's that movement. So let's try that again. So you can see that there. If I flip this direction, we don't want to do that. Actually, we want to end up using the cylindrical mate because that's going to allow rotation as well as the translation, which is just the up and down movement there. All right, next thing that we want is going to be revolute mate, and the revolute mate is going to be set up for, my apologies, we want fasten mate. Fasten mate, we're going to hold down, let's see here, let's bring this guy out here. Now we do need to end up finding that correct point. And so if we hover over this, we can see that there's this center point here. So I'm gonna go ahead and click right there. Now that is the point that is in the center of this. So we do want that. Now that's gonna be in contact with this guy right here, right? So now the connector pin is going to be fastened in there. And what we want is, with our crank arm, we want to allow rotation to occur, right, along this point. And so what we're going to end up doing is we're going to set up the revolute mate. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover over this. Now, as you can see, this is that center point of the connector pin. So I'm going to go ahead and click there. And then now what I can do is I can hover over here, and I can hold down shift while hovering over this plane, and I can click right here. Now, as you can see, this is coming in correctly here. I'm going to press the green check mark, all right? Now, in terms of this, what we want is for this crank arm to be set up so that it could be over here on this side. And we're going to go ahead and set this up so that these guys are in line too, right here. Now, what should happen with this is this point, or this socket head, should also rotate in this hole as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the revolute mate once again. Now, I'm going to keep in mind that this hole is right here. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out. So what I can do, I can hold down shift while hovering over this, click right here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to the top of the socket head. I'm going to hover over this plane, hold down shift, click right there, and then now it's going to end up showing some crazy behavior here. If I click solve though, it's going to end up solving this so that it'll look like the correct way it's supposed to. I'm going to press the green check mark. And so now if I press X, we should have it be the case where we can end up sliding this and using it correctly. Now, one thing that I do want to mention is it looks like this guy's going out way too far. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in and I'm going to actually edit this. So I'm going to double click on this revolute. This is the last thing we did. And I'm actually going to click X on the Vex crank arm. So we had it be this point on the Vex crank arm. We still have the socket head mate connection point selected. And I'm just going to move the crank arm selection point to be on this hole. That's going to move it in one more. If I click solve, now we can see that our screw slider does not come out as far. So if I press the green check mark, now we can end up using this again, and we see that we have that motion that is intended where this does not go out too far. What additionally I could end up doing is I could probably move this in even another one so that you have 3 holes in between there. But I think that this is good enough here. Last and final step of what we want to end up doing is we do want to end up putting in our Vex connector pin here. So if I go to fasten mate, we can end up setting this up. I could also do revolute mate. That means that this would be rotating. Let's go revolute mate here. And so, well, actually no, we're gonna go fasten mate because I don't think that this is gonna be rotating. So what we could do is hover over this part, and we want to select that inner piece that's in the middle. So after I select that, you'll see that that piece is in the middle. And what we can do is hover over this plane here, hold down shift while hovering over this plane, and select this point. I can see that that part came in correctly. It might be the case where it comes in like that. If it comes in like this, you'll see that the bottom part of that is in contact. It's sharing the same position as that, and our connector pin's actually going through the crank arm. We don't want that to be the case, so we can flip the axis, and that's going to set it up where it's oriented correctly. Now, and so in real life, we're going to end up having this be where it is the screw, right, or the tap screw, so it can bite into the plastic material. But just for the simulation purposes, we're going to use a socket head screw. So now we can go into here, so we can see I need to flip the direction, green check mark, and so now what we've got is a completed project. What I can end up doing is I can right click Revolute 1, I can animate this, and what you can end up doing is you can go on loop. If I press the play button, it's going to end up animating this. Let's see here, let's go with this guy right here. Let's try this, animate. We'll go to loop, we can click play, and so now you can see that we've got this where it is simulating that real life movement. What you can also do is you can mess with the steps. So if you put in 20 and press play, it's going to go super fast. If you put in 100, it's going to slow it down just a little bit. But that's what the steps do. But that is our completed project. Thank you all for watching. If you got any questions, comments, concerns, drop them in the comments. As always, like and subscribe. See y'all later. Bye-bye.